Training is something that not everyone uses properly in Football Manager. A lot of the time, players will just leave it up to their assistant manager to run the sessions, but there are actually many benefits to setting your own training schedules. So this video will be a complete training guide for Football Manager 23 so that you can make the most out of the time spent off the pitch. So we'll start off looking at what you want to do in the preseason for your training schedules. So if you click on the training tab on the left, you can see all of this information here, but we're interested in the schedules tab at the top. Now when you come onto here, you're going to have a drop down box in the top left that allows you to change the intensity of your sessions within the preseason. So what I'd recommend doing is running heavy early sessions at the beginning of the preseason so that your players have a chance to get up to scratch with their fitness. This is really important because if they're coming off the back of a holiday or a break off, they need to get that conditioning up so that they're ready for the season ahead. Then as you progress through the preseason, I would suggest changing the focus to either tactical or technical for the mid-section. And then whichever one you didn't choose for the mid-section, you make that the late section. So if you have a technical mid-section, you'd have a tactical late section. This will get your team up to scratch with the tactics that you've put on, but also will help with their fitness as they're going to be out there practicing on the pitch anyway. The second box down from preseason is your tactical styles, so however you set your team up, however you want them to play, select an option from this list that best suits that. So say you're implementing a 4-3-3 and you want your wingers to be putting balls into the box consistently and staying wide, then you could select wing play. And it's going to tailor your training schedule to work on exactly that, so that when you get onto the pitch for an actual game, they're very familiar with that tactical approach and they're going to play a lot better. So yeah, when setting up your training schedule, you want to be looking at this and making sure that you selected the right tactical approach for what you're trying to implement. Next up, we're going to look at reassigning your coaches, so go right to the end of these tabs and click on coaches, and then in the top right you can click on edit coach assignments. In this section, you can assign your coaches to specific training sessions on attacking, defending, possession, whatever it might be, and you want to do this based on their statistics down at the bottom. So as you can see here, my fitness coach has 20 fitness, so it makes sense to check the box for him to take that session. Now the game does highlight boxes that you can check based on the statistics that it's given you, and these are kind of like a rough guideline of what you should be doing. But as you can see, when I check that box, it does reduce this 3-star session from Brian Barry Murphy down to a 2.5 session because he's kind of overworked. So it's all a balancing act as to whether you want an extra coach on that session to make it a better session, or whether you want to keep him as a singular coach on this session so that that session improves a little bit itself. So I'd highly recommend coming in here and making sure firstly that your coaches are taking sessions that they're good at, but also making sure that the workload is spread evenly and that every session is going to be the best session it can possibly be. Now we're moving back over to schedules and we're going to the third option down, which is scenario. Now here you've got 4 options. You've got big match preparation, fixture congestion, boot camp, and a full week of rest. So big match preparation, this is something you'll want to select if you've got either a big cup game or a big game in the league or a couple of big games coming up in the near future. What this is going to do is it's going to set a rough guide as to what your training schedule should look like for those next 3 weeks. And then based on who you're actually playing, you can go in and change the sessions accordingly. So say we're using the example of we're just about to go into a cup final and we're playing prime Stoke City. I would go in and change one of the sessions to make sure that we're working on aerial defensive ability, as we know that they're going to be pumping lots of long balls into the box and the massive throw-ins from Rory Delap. So we need to make sure that our defenders are winning their headers and also being disciplined with their positioning and their marking. So say I was going to change my match tactics, you've got a bunch of options down here that you can swap it out for, and of course we want to go into defending. Now of course, if we're using my example of the prime Stoke City, we're going to click aerial defense and it's going to give us a list of training priorities. Inside here, it shows you the primary focus of the session, the secondary focus, and the tertiary focus, and then gives a bunch of pros and cons for each individual aspect of the training. So as you can see, in the primary focus, it's working on everything we need, which is heading, marking, technique, concentration, and positioning. So if you've got big games coming up against teams that have a very familiar tactical approach, then you need to be coming in here and altering your training schedule accordingly. The second scenario is fixture congestion, and this is something that I think Jurgen Klopp needs to have a look at. So what this is going to do is it's going to take a 3-week period where you have a ton of games as shown by the match, rest, match, rest, match, and it's going to place a rest or recovery session in between every single one. So the best time to put this on is the Christmas period, as you're going to have a lot of games every single week, so it's important that your players are getting enough rest. The third scenario, which is boot camp, is mainly referring to your preseason schedule, so it's going to be working on stuff like resistance, quickness, endurance, fitness, that kind of thing. And this is all about getting your team up to scratch in terms of fitness and conditioning ready for the season ahead. So I'd recommend having bootcamp on for the first 3 weeks of the preseason and then shifting to a more technical or tactical focus in the mid to late preseason. Finally, the fourth scenario is a full week of rest, and this honestly is as simple as it sounds. So this is a great training session for the end of the season if you want to give your players a bit of time off after a really busy time, and generally it's going to do your squad a lot of good as it's going to increase your happiness, it's going to decrease your fatigue and increase your conditioning. The only two things it does decrease are sharpness and team cohesion, but these are things that you can gain back fairly quickly anyway. Also, if you are running a full week of rest, I would recommend throwing some extracurricular activities in as and when. So what you want to do is click on one of the rest periods and come all the way down here to extracurricular. Now you've got two options here, you've got community outreach and team bonding, and of course again it's going to list the pros and cons of each of them. Both of them are going to slightly reduce your conditioning, but to be honest, because you're resting every single other day of the week, that's going to be brought back up immediately. Community outreach is going to build up your individual players' teamwork, but also increase your team cohesion, which is going to help counteract the reduction of team cohesion which the rest of the week will be causing. Then you have team bonding, which is going to greatly increase your happiness, increase your team cohesion, increase individual players' teamwork attributes, and increase upcoming match teamwork. It's also going to slightly reduce your fatigue and slightly reduce your conditioning. So as you can see, there are a lot of pros for a team bonding session, but community outreach is going to help you in a slightly different way in terms of PR. Both are going to be really good for your team, so I'd advise throwing them in if you're on a full week of rest. If this video helped you master your training schedule, then make sure to watch our video on how to set up your scouting network as well. I've even put it on screen for you now.